Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's uLaw webinar. Today's webinar has been accredited for 1 hour of CPD credits in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. Once again, I request you to mute your phone lines and use the chat window to ask any questions that you may have. For our friends and colleagues who are joining us using their computer's audio, once again, request you if you can use the phone lines provided and the phone number to dial in direct, as the audio quality is found to be way better using the phone lines. Okay? So in today's topic, we're going to cover the legal office or the law office client management, or what we call as contact management 101, but also try and extend the Law Society's requirements as well as the Law Society's guidelines in how you manage contact information within your legal firm's database, practice management, or legal accounting systems. Some of the expected set of documents that you need to produce as an outcome of having engaged a particular client. The various phases or the facets of this client relationship with your legal firm, whether that is a prospective client, we otherwise term as a ghost client, whether that's a brand new client that has retained you, or whether it's a client who has initially shown interest, retained you, but again has non-engaged you for whatever reasons. So we're going to look at the different obligations that you have as a legal professional and how you can handle some of these various different aspects of that client life cycle. Okay? Now, like every other uLaw webinar, today's webinar has a clear-cut agenda. We're going to focus on client intake, how simple it can be, the different various forms of client intake based on the advent of technology and you being a 21st century legal professional, the different channels, the omni-channel way that a legal firm accepts clients today. We'll talk about important pieces of data that you can collect that's going to help you not only better market your service, but also produce certain specific Law Society documents. We'll look at the compliance set of documents that you're again responsible for. We'll briefly highlight how uLaw helps you through a group management that allows you to not only search for information faster, but also allows you to utilize that towards additional parties as well as conflict screening. And then we'll move on to how you best can handle non-engagements as well as conflict checks, a very important aspect before you could create a matter or a file for a particular client. Okay. Today's webinar has been accredited for 1 hour of professionalism credits in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. Now, once we've looked at how you can manage your conflict checks, we'll then look at the Law Society's requirements in terms of either weekly, monthly, quarterly reviews that you can have with your client, depending on the status of the file itself, and set of documents that you may want to produce along with, let's say, a closure of a file so that you can bring a logical closure to that particular file relationship. Starting with, once you do the intake for the client, important documents that can validate the client's verification, be it a driver's license, be it a passport, whatever you may use to ensure that it is truly the client's identity. Then we're looking at different sorts of workflow documents that your legal firm can prepare for through an automated process or through a manual process, whatever benefits your firm best. But keep in mind certain documents such as an engagement letter or a retainer letter based on the situation, authorization letters depending on the type of file, closure letters, which is definitely a standard template that you may want to consider to, as I said, bring that file to a logical closure, attaching it with various other documents including invoices, statement of accounts, bill of cost, etc. Then we'll look at source of contact, which is in fact a very important document, most often overlooked. It's a document that's also expected as part of that compliance requirement that outlines the different avenues through which you accept your clients. It's really not only a marketing component, so through that report, you could truly understand what different avenues am I accepting clients in. So how did my client get to know me? That's really the source of that particular client. It's also used by the Law Society to make sure that you're just not a referral legal firm, that you're actually someone who's doing the work and you're just not passing on leads to others to do their work. Okay? Because somewhere it's found to have been passing the buck without real ownership of the legal firm's true nature. And based on file information, you may also have certain templates that can provide you with credit card authorization, similar to the authorization letter that we were talking about. Okay? So we'll definitely take some examples and templates of such documents that are required as part of that client life cycle. And finally, we'll look at the ease of importing and exporting client information if you're going to be utilizing the mobile app version of uLaw. And we talk about the mobile app version predominantly to talk about the convenience that you have as a legal professional today to be able to carry your law firm's details right in the palms of your hand through a phone, the ease of intaking a client through the phone, the ease of adding information and truly collaborating, even if it's a larger law firm, in terms of adding to the information that already exists. Okay, so there are no more excuses for scanning documents when you're at court, because you have opportunities now today with technology to make that process much more seamless and more rudimentary and ease of purpose. Once again, for our friends and colleagues who joined us a bit late today, we welcome you to today's uLaw's webinar. Today's webinar has been accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits in the provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. And you may search for Contact Management 101 as the title of today's webinar. A few weeks earlier, and as part of our CPD sessions, we offer a webinar specific focused on everything practice management. And truly, today's webinar is a subset of that particular everything practice management session. It takes the first phase of the overall set of 7 different obligations that we talk about that you as a legal professional have towards not only your client, but also towards the Law Society itself. So when we look at the professional obligation and look at that first step that you want to take, it is truly the client intake, service, and communication aspect of your law firm or your legal firm. Okay? So we start off with having a process, having a discipline of being able to record in detail all of the consultations and conversations that you may have with a prospective client and the different documents that you would then generate as you progress that particular conversation with that client and move them through that chain of engaging them as a client, retaining them as a client, and then going through the motion of the file or matter itself, the documents that you have to produce through that cycle. And finally, once the matter is closed, you are able to provide a certain logical closure through a settlement of accounts, which really talks about every financial touch point that has been in that particular file, along with any final words for a closure letter. Okay? So we'll start with the calls and consultations, and it's really where that first step that you take in engaging and intaking client information. So with another 15-20 minutes left in the presentation, at the end of it, we'll talk about, we'll actually do a demonstration where I can walk you through this through the use of uLaw as a platform. Okay? So once you've done that client intake, one of the very important steps before you create a file is to ensure that there are no conflicts in the data that you've received from the client themselves. More important that there are no conflicts in representing or a client's defendant, as well as client in terms of when you bring in that information from a different firm. Okay, so conflict checking for confidentiality information is a very important step. Once you've done the conflict screening and you've determined that there are no conflicts in representing this individual client, then you may want to move forward with determining the retainer letter, being very clear and precise about the service level agreement that both you as well as the client are expected to meet, including the collateral for fees, whether that's what is the retainer amount, how often should it be topped up. We've spoken about this quite often, but important to keep in mind that all of that is part of that initial client intake. Okay, so it's not just capturing information, it's really progressing that client's relationship with your legal firm. So once you've determined the collateral, you've throughout this process, keep in mind that you want to bring that amazing brand experience, the customer experience, and also talk about how you can enhance the user experience through the use of technology such as the mobile phone, where you're now providing other avenues or other channels through which you can include data into your system. So you're not waiting for your client to come back to your office. You're able to take information right wherever you are, where you're at court or in a restaurant, as a social gathering, wherever it may be. It really talks about that improved, enhanced customer experience and user experience that you can provide. Yeah. And once you've signed up that retainer agreement, we talk about ensuring that you've got the retainer receipt, ensuring that you've obviously deposited the retainer in your trust account, provided that receipt, very important aspect of the whole client intake service and communication. And the last step, obviously, is taking a totally different route. So this is an ideal situation where a client walks through a simple progression from being an interested party to being a retained customer. Now, obviously, from there on, it moves on to file management that we're not going to get into today. But let's assume that there's an interested party and give you some information. Now, there's two ways that can go wrong or not towards the ideal situation. One is the client or the prospective client gives you all of this information and then truly disappears. Gives you this information and then you have no way of reaching out to that client again. Maybe it's false information, but for whatever reason, they disappear. Philosophy study talks about how you are responsible to mark or categorize that client as a ghost client so that you still take responsibility for having saved that information as part of your legal firm's contact management, but you also clearly accept the fact that you did not retain that client, and sometimes it's important that you'll even send them a letter that outlines that you had taken their information but have never retained them. Now, the other side that we spoke about is a client that progresses beyond being a ghost client. So they give you the information, they in fact go ahead and want to engage you. Okay, so this could be through a retainer letter. This could be through a non-retainer, just a general operating bank account, through just a general payment, and then in which case it's just an engagement letter where they agree to pay you for your fees after the work is done. Now, if that were the case, and for whatever reason, after that engagement letter was signed, the client and or yourself decide that this is not an ideal relationship, official relationship in terms of progressing forward, then it's very important to keep in mind that you have a template or a process or some form of way of producing and sending a non-engagement letter that clearly outlines that you, as the legal professional, do not have any more responsibilities in taking care of this individual or this client's legal needs. Okay, that's very important, because otherwise it's an open-ended conversation and there's no closure to that. Yeah. So here's a quick subset of all the specific documentation that you may want to keep in mind. Now, this presentation is being recorded and will be available to you as early as Monday, Tuesday next week in our YouTube channel. So you can always, revisit this webinar recorded session. But to give you a general glimpse, I think we've discussed specific names. So starting with retainer letter, one of the most important, I would say, entry points into a formal agreement that you have with the client. Here are some of the important components that you may want to keep in mind as part of that client intake process, ensuring that there's clarity in nature, scope of work, responsibilities, the frequency of communication, your fee arrangements, even termination details, right? So if you have a policy that the client, let's say the client does not top up the policy, the retainer every time it drops below $500, then maybe that's an automated cancellation or non-engagement. We've seen law firms that have strict policies when it comes to retainer. Okay. And of course, the last one is, it's always a great example that you can set yourself and for others in the industry by providing not just a blurb, but really being meaningful of the risks involved with certain forms of communication, which really leaves your client with a very prudent feel. Okay. So what are the documentations or documents, if you will, that the Law Society may be looking for? Okay. We spoke about client ID verification. So let's say you've taken the information of Mr. John Smith. Of course, you have to back that up with a driver's license or a passport copy or whatever you feel fit to be a valid identity, proof of identity from the client. Okay. So if it's a corporate client, sometimes it's the corporation letter. Could be other forms of identity for the corporation. But if it's for individuals, of course, driver's license, passport are some common examples that we've seen. The Law Society also likes if you could fill out a client intake form which truly outlines all of the information that you captured at the time of the initial engagement. And why is this necessary? For twofold. One is it gives you the clarity that you need when you're dealing with this client. So the Law Society, I would say, amplifies that need through that documentation. And the other aspect is obviously to keep a tab of the source of contact, as well as ensuring that you have all of the information you need to move forward with representing that client. Okay. So yes, it's a great, nice to have, but when you have it as a document that they're constantly reviewing, it almost becomes a nice discipline of a must-have, and that promotes a better culture of consistent data capture within the industry. Yeah. We of course look for templates of retainer letters, ensuring that you have communicated through all of those different components we spoke about earlier are well documented and drafted. And all of this is to ensure that the client, the public, or whoever you serve, they're served well. They're very clear in the correspondence and communication that you have. We're looking at conflict check confirmation, retainer receipts, any conflict resolution documentation that needs to go about, source of contacts, non-engagement letters, and for existing clients, or let's call them as clients that are with ongoing files, we're talking about quarterly updates with statement of activities, quarterly updates with bill of cost and summary, because these are all the financial touch points that exist in that file. And if it's files that are actually going over a year, yearly updates with statement of accounts is a great opportunity for you to have that touch point with your client. On a regular basis, at least, you would obviously send them invoices, pre-bills to ensure that you're billing them and getting them comfortable with a cycle of financial transactions. And as I mentioned, closure letter is one of the most important aspects that can really summarize the overall experience that you've provided as a firm to your clients and ensuring their success and hoping that they would either come back with another prospective file or refer you to another friend or colleague for future business. I want to briefly touch upon this. I don't want to get too much into this particular slide as we want to give ourselves some more time to do a demo. But this was a question that was actually asked as part of our last or a few weeks earlier. We made it part of this presentation, and we had submitted to the Law Society, and this is our first week of running this particular topic as a CPD session. So we want to thank everyone who motivated us to make this particular webinar as a CPD session. But this particular slide stands out, and I'll take just a few minutes to cover this important question. And the question is, how often do I reach my client or reach out to my client, communicate, correspond with my client? and what are the important documents that I may want to share with them at what periodic basis. Now, the Law Society recommends that at a minimum that you have a quarterly review. But of course, based on the file, the nature of the scope of matter, that cycle may differ based on each practice, each legal professional. For a POA, you're like in and out. It's done within a certain time period. If there's a bit of a wait time sometimes in a POA matter, then of course you're going to wait till the court date has been provided to you. So there's certainly a waiting game. But in general, they talk about a quarterly review with your client if the matter is still open at a minimum. You don't want to give it beyond 3 months for that first touch point. Even if there's no information to provide, it's great to give them a quick update of the status quo. Okay? The Law Society also recommends that on an annual basis that you do send your clients statement of accounts, both for your general and, importantly, the trust accounts, including any trust balances that there may be. Okay, so if you have a client and it's an ongoing matter, let's say it's a criminal matter, it certainly helps to provide with a annual letter that talks about where the legal firm is with that relationship, with that matter, with that client. And as I said, trust balances, if any, are very important and are outlined through your ledgers. But on a transactional basis, you want to keep in mind that you have to provide crisp, timely invoices. You can always send your clients previews or pre-bills to get it approved and then send them the invoices. That's a very new process that I've started noticing or observing within our client base. They being able to use uLaw's pre-bill, send it to them with a little watermark, get it approved, that there are certain changes that have to be done. They often make those changes before they send out the actual invoice. Okay? Statement of activity, which covers all the dockets, the account statement, and any touch point that you may have in that matter for both your trust and general account. Okay? The bill of cost and a summary which not only has the legal fees covered during that structure of that matter, but also has the disbursements and very importantly, any discounts applied, right? So your client comes back saying, can you please give me a discount for that $100, and you give them a $20 discount, and that needs to be part of that bill of cost and summary. Client fee books and aging report of any unpaid invoices. So if you have this struggle of going back and forth with unpaid invoices, especially with certain types of clients, then this document is a fantastic formal document of sending them your concern that they haven't yet paid for certain invoices that are well due the originally agreed upon engagement. So maybe you had agreed that it would be a net 30, and you can clearly, through that aging report, outline the day of sending that invoice or generating that invoice, and if it's exceeded that 30 days, outlining it in red and really trying to bring it to their attention that they owe you that money. So keep in mind that many of these documentation we're talking about and the Law Society compliance, one is, of course, to keep you in a bit of a discipline so that, as I mentioned, overall, as a Law Society, there's a commonality to it. But also many of these documents were meant to safeguard the sanity of the working society too, right? The legal professional. And this is one such document, is to be able to send them that statement of account along with that aging report to truly emphasize the need for payment, right? And that's one step further is why we talk about the importance of having and utilizing that trust account, of being able to accept money in advance, and you do the due diligence, you do the formal process and the right ways of earning the money and transferring it from trust to general rather than have to wait for a client to pay you. Okay? There, the onus is on your law firm to do the right steps to make your own money, and since it's well within your control, you then dictate how soon, how fast, how disciplined you can be to earn that money. Okay? Of course, you have closure letters, and we often recommend having personalized or branded experiences for timely other letters such as Christmas cards, certain holidays, etc., that truly can continue to convey your brand exposure. Okay, and the professionalism that you provide. Okay, so we're going to talk about group management of clients or contacts in your law firm. So as a legal firm or a law firm, you're going to have to deal with contact information. Okay, so consider it as your mini CRM. CRM primarily was, customer relationship management. But as a legal firm, customers aren't the only type of contacts that you deal with, right? Today, CRM systems also manage and maintain other types of relationship, but they're just continuing to call it CRM. But we want to extend that as a contact relationship management. So for example, within a legal firm, you obviously have your customers or clients. But depending on the situation of the file itself, if it's a small claims, your client, assuming is a plaintiff, your legal firm often also includes or saves information about the opposing party, who is the defendant. The legal firm also comes in contact with a representative of the opponent, so the opposing party's legal counsel. Could be a paralegal, could be a lawyer, but that's another contact that your legal firm comes in contact with. Okay, so it's not just a customer, is not the only type of contact that your legal firm has to deal with. Now, wouldn't it be easier if you can tag these different contacts as different contexts? And that's what we allow you to do through this group management. So now you can now start to tag and categorize these contacts as plaintiffs, defendants. Now, the same contact could be a plaintiff and a client, so it's easier for you to recognize the relationship of an individual contact with your firm. We spoke about earlier the importance of ghost clients and the need for you to categorize these ghost clients so that 6 months, 8 months after that's happened, you're always able to quickly understand who are those contacts who came in, gave their information, and disappeared, right? Because if one of them were to reappear, it's easier for you to now promote them from a ghost client status to an actual client. You can manage other types of contacts that your legal firm deals with are your own employees. We call them co-workers, but it could be, again, it's your own employees. And when you have to have a collaborative nature within a law firm, it's important to really understand who within the law firm or legal firm are generating these documents, because often you need them to sign those documents. So if it's a multi-law firm office, then the need for collaboration is higher. Or if it includes now an assistant, it includes other professionals in the firm, then you need a way to categorize those contacts. That's another great opportunity through this group management to categorize, classify these contacts into these various tags. uLaw, being a legal accounting as well as a business accounting software, goes one step further. It takes care of the vendor management. So let's say you have vendors that you pay as part of your business keeping. Okay, yes, you're a legal office and you have law society compliance, but you are a business. You are a for-profit business, and you need to manage your business with regards to the expenses, with regards to the revenue of the overall firm, etc. Right? So one of the important contact group that your firm deals with are the different vendors that you pay on a regular basis. Could be for internet, could be for rent, could be for utilities, etc. Right? It could even be the Ministry of Attorney General, could be the courthouse for whom you actually write out checks as part of an application fee or a court fee. Right? These are vendors too. So you could categorize these contacts so you can repurpose that and really draw reports as to where the most touch point has been. And last but not least, of course, you can manage a source of referral, not just a source of contact. It really gives you a meaning for where within that source of contact, who within that source of contact is giving you the most referral. Okay, so we talk about advertisements, or maybe you have specific referral programs, word of mouth, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. Okay, so I hope that drives home that contact management, yes, it's primarily for the life cycle of progressing that client, but can also mean components of contacts on groups that you manage as a legal firm for various other aspects of your businesses as well. So you want to keep that in mind. Truly, there isn't a law society guideline in terms of how you categorize it. This is just a best practice that we want to provide you for the sanity of your firm so that you can now focus and be more efficient. This was another question that came about, and we've added it as a slide. What are the important steps when you need to handle with a conflict screening or a conflict check? Okay. So you want to ensure that you're able to save this contact or this client information and then run them through this conflict screen, put them through the test. And what that really entails is the ability for you to search by first name, last name to begin with. If you've ever come across this individual or this individual's opposing party at all within your firm. Okay. Then it talks about, have you ever created a file for such an individual within your firm? And then we go one step granular to check if you ever come across such an individual as an opposing party in a totally different matter. Okay, so have you by any chance got to know certain information about this client that you did not necessarily recognize early on? Okay. Now when you're saving the information of the client, certain important components to keep in mind was who handled that client intake. Could have been your assistant, yourself in a solo practitioner situation, or a different colleague in a multi-law firm situation. Ensure that you have a process, regardless of who's capturing it, that you're always asking for a correspondence address, if possible a phone number for communication, and any other details such as email or fax. Ensuring that any conflict screen search is clearly documented and date stamped. And the relationship of such a conflict, if you were to find one, is clearly documented as well. Whether this individual was a defendant, was another party, was a witness in a different file, the relationship of that contact and why you entail it to be a conflict to begin with is an important aspect to it. Now, if you determine that it is a conflict and your firm is not possible to manage this file, then again, you may be that Good Samaritan lawyer or legal person who now passes this information along to another law firm because you still want to help this individual client. You can identify if you've done so and to whom you've done that. And that is if finally you have declined that engagement or retainer. Okay? So with another 25 minutes left in our, about 20 minutes I would say, left in our presentation, I'll spend maybe another 5 minutes on these slides. I think we just have a few more slides. Yeah, just 4 or 5 more slides. So I'll stick to the capabilities in terms of analytics. Now let's say you've done all the work, all the heavy lifting, fantastic, the dust settles, and you're at the end of your quarterly review of really understanding how your business is performing. Now you want to understand the types of clients that you are most profitable in serving. The revenue is great. It's something that's very natural to you. You love that particular area of practice. And as well, if you find that you're generating a lot of leads through a specific marketing campaign and for that specific area of practice, then you actually have a fantastic plan to accomplish that success that you always planned for. Right? You like small claims, you're marketing through Facebook, and Facebook is giving you a lot of leads that you've now tracked through source of contact that are converting into clients. And within the matter, we provide the ability for you to track the time spent and the time billed. That gives you the percentage of revenue and profit based on your per hour rate or otherwise. So now you can really map if you are doing the right things to attract the right clients at a profitable rate. And the analytics allows you to derive that kind of data. It allows you to compare client information. So who's the best client, worst client, where did you spend most time, did you make that kind of money, even to the point of you can also draw a chart up of all the pro bono that you provided by client. So clients that have really enjoyed the free services that you've provided. This is a critical component for a law firm. Why? It's because data is power. Large law firms make very informed, meaningful, strategic decisions based on the data points that they collect. We as a platform allow you to capture that data as well as provide you meaningful information about what that data says to you. Okay? As we say, know the unknown, measure it, and plan for better success. And last but not the least, we want to talk about the benefits that you as a legal professional can gain out of doing the right research for the tools that are necessary to run your firm. And when you're in that research, please do consider a legal accounting system, which does practice management as well, but most importantly, the aspects of legal accounting. Because as a total cost of ownership in terms of what this provides you of managing your firm, the legal accounting is purpose-built to do both trust, general, and all of the law society's guideline-related documents. So repeating that today's webinar is accredited for 1 hour of professionalism credits for the Law Society of Ontario, British Columbia, and New Brunswick. The legal accounting provides you better TCO, efficiencies in managing your practice, gives you the data points that allows you to make meaningful decisions, strategic decisions as owners of this practice, gives you the compliance both from a law society standpoint as well as compliance from a CRA standpoint for both corporate taxes, jurisdictional taxes, and if you can encapsulate that experience through a cloud-based provider, then it gives you the added flexibility of being able to take advantage of all of these wonderful fundamentals anywhere by utilizing the power of the cloud. Okay? Okay, so before we get into an actual quick survey session, I've already got a few folks asking me for demonstrating some of these steps. So I'm going to have to go back to my slides real quick. I'll start here. And let's take a quick example of, again, the different venues that you could use to intake that client. So I'm going to quickly shift gears, and I'm going to log in into my uLaw system. So I've always used this particular user, Roger Moore, as my Fixtures legal professional, so I'm logged into our Playground account. The recently modified contacts gives me the opportunity to quickly maneuver and quickly, if I click on Olive John, of course I'm going to be taken right into Olive John's contact. Saves me time. I've been working on it over a long weekend. Okay, I can quickly update that information. Just-in-time updates of that information. But let me start with a different flow here. Let me start with the legal professional intaking this information right out of their phone. Let's start there. Let's say the client intake happened right there from the phone, and then how it's then used through every step of the way. Okay? So to do that, I'm going to quickly transfer my control from my web browser for a minute. into my app. Okay, so I hope you're able to see my screen where I've actually logged in. Well, let me log out and show you. So this is really my login screen for my uLaw app on my Android phone. I'm going to provide the same Roger Moore user ID, put in the password, and I'm going to sign in. Okay? So let's say I have this on my phone, and one of the first steps, I met with a client. All right, so I'm going to use this little add feature, click on it, and I'm going to say add new contact. Okay? So let me add Stephen. Okay? So let me say Mr. Stephen. I'll say his nickname is Mr. Steve. Again, it's important in certain court forms where they do ask you for the individual's nickname. I'm going to say, okay, I can add email, I can add a phone number. Let me just go ahead and add a phone number. And very important, I'm going to quickly capture the individual's address. Okay, so I'm just going to say Strange Avenue, and this is in Toronto. And just really quick. Okay, and I just add that information. Now this information is available to me to search. I can just say my first name. And there it is, Stephen Colbert. I'm going to click on that information, and it's very much available. Okay. I can call this individual directly. Okay. I can import that conversation, if I choose to, into my uLaw app. So let's assume that this is giving you the convenience and the power of being able to take that client intake information right from your phone. And this was quick and easy. You met Mr. Stephen at a courthouse or at a restaurant, and you took that information real fast. And at least you've taken that first step, and you can always ask Mr. Stephen to then follow that up with being able to schedule a time with your assistant at your office. So let me jump into the browser version of it. Now either it's myself, or it could be my assistant who's now picking up this conversation and this client intake for some next steps. So we spoke about those next steps being ensuring that you have a client ID verification. Right? Okay. Let me get in my contacts. I can either search for it by first name, or I can search for that contact information by last name. I haven't done any grouping as yet. It was just a fast and easy client intake right from my phone, but I'm able to then at least have that as part of my database to begin with. I did not miss that opportunity for a sale, right? And I type in Colbert, and here I find Mr. Stephen information. I can further edit this if I like. It has all the information that I capture in my phone. I can add a source of contact. Maybe I didn't know it at the time. You can say this is a family referral. Has all the information. Maybe I didn't have the postal code. So basically I can amplify this information that I've originally captured. You can be rest assured the same data is now available to me on my mobile phone when I'm carrying that with me, when I'm using my mobile work office. Okay, so let's say you've done that first step. What is the subsequent next step? So one of the things is to do a conflict screening. Let me go ahead and take the opportunity to search up if there's any Stephen, if I've come across Stephen in other matters, if there's any conflict at all. And when you notice any documents that you want to generate, there's also this compliance component that comes along with the uLaw platform. Now this keeps in mind some of the periodic pieces of information that you want to capture. You may generate client fee book, source of contact, as I mentioned, aging report, a great report. Of course, in this particular contact doesn't make sense because you've just started working on this particular matter. But it's important that you may want to generate an envelope to send that initial information to Stephen. You can include some pieces of information about your firm, your address, okay? And you can also brand this whole experience. You can actually have your letterhead or your logo on it to provide that consistent brand experience. Same thing with labels, but I'll draw your attention as we wait for the conflict screening report to generate what we call as a source of contact. Now this is a very important document. You can capture it for, let's say, the monthly or a date range between January and now. And what this report gives you is the different sources through which you have actually had your client intake done. Okay, where are your contacts coming from? Almost 18% of your contacts over this last 3 months has been through family referral. Another 18% through client referral. Okay, and the next best was about 18% again from external referral. 12% from friends. And let's say you really want to compare how your website is performing, you can compare this percentage with the previous year. Maybe it's improving. Okay, so you can do that at a click of a button. You can easily compare what's improved by just providing a date range. So you can change the date range to be last year. Just say the end date to be December 31st. And there you go. And again, that's just a quick and easy comparison, but this is an information that you're often also asked during certain audits. Now, for example, if there are certain pieces of information, let's say you did a client intake via phone, you really didn't know the source of contact then, you can leave them to be not categorized at that particular time. We even give you the list of contacts that have not been categorized yet. If you look at Mr. Gregory Peck, you don't know where that contact came from. But let's say that individual follows up, you could most certainly search up that same contact information and add to Gregory's information. You can choose that, click Edit, and further collaborate. Okay, so let's look at the conflict screening report and what that looks like. So here is the conflict screening report, which is date stamped. So right at the bottom, you see that this is done on the 1st of March. You have a few Stephen Jones, Stephen Fire, and there's some matters for Stephen. So technically what you would do at this time is take this information, do your own research, make sure that there are no conflicts, because at least what happens is uLaw gives you a starting point, You can look at this divorce matter and see if this was really the Stephen Colbert that you're dealing with. Let's assume you moved on, there are no conflicts, and you want to continue creating the file. Okay? I'm going to go right from my dashboard. So following back to my presentation, the first step of client intake, detailed recording of any call, and you could have put that all in the notes, or you can do that once you've created the file for the client. We've done the conflict check. Now we're going to move on to the next step, which is ensuring there's a retainer letter, creating a file, and I'll also show you how you can add all that information in one place. Let's go ahead and click on the Matter button to create a new file within uLaw, and this is where you're creating a file or a matter for Mr. Stephen. Okay? So let's just say it's a slip and fall, small claim matter. Now I'm going to assume for simplicity that this is a flat rate. So right away, you can either have your own template, or there are certain templates that we bring to the table that you can utilize in terms of retainer letters, in terms of engagement letters. We spoke about those types of templates that are always helpful and handy. So we've got some samples, and let's take a quick look at them. So this is another aspect of that client service intake and service and communication. So let's say you have a template defined for a flat rate engagement, where you're accepting a 565 retainer as part of that flat rate matter. Now you can generate that in Word document as well. You can personalize it using your letterhead and logos with pieces of information already captured from your file, such as the matter, the file number, the client itself, the matter, the purpose and nature and scope of the matter, important as part of that retainer letter, any termination details, the correspondence and how often you plan to communicate with your client, and have the individual signatures. Now each template would vary, of course, so you have further templates for hourly, contingency, specific samples for POA, HTA, and also non-engagement. We spoke about templates for non-engagement. If at this particular time, if Mr. Stephen were to non-engage you, that would be a letter that would be ideal to send back. Okay? Clearly says, today we'll not receive any funds. Treat this letter to confirm that we're not acting on your behalf, will not be taking any steps with respect to this matter. Okay. So we determined collateral for fees of 565. Let's assume we're depositing it, and let's provide them with a retainer receipt. And they're going to new retainer, 565, information, and give them a retainer receipt. Okay? Again, the retainer receipt, there are certain protocols and data elements that are critical for you to capture. Which of course has a personalized letterhead logo, has all the information about the amount, the individual client, as well as the receipt number, including the matter and the form of payment. Okay? Now if I were to click on my compliance aspect to it, So here's a client ID verification document. We spoke about that. So this is a document that can accompany a driver's license scanned copy, okay? Or you may just write down the driver's license information. Or you may say, I did take the driver's license as the identity of this individual. Of course, all the information is pre-populated, making it easier for you. You can say identified by Roger. Okay. Date. As the client intake form. So this is the form that allows you to make sure that you've captured all of the elements that the Law Society wants you to provide. You know, how do you hear about this client? Family. That's already pre-populated because that was the source of contact. Type of photo ID provided. Put it in. Driver's license. Stephen. You've got his address, correspondence, phone number, and you can further add to that. Okay, so that's your client ID verification, client intake form, even your conflict screening form. So once you've completed the conflict check, you can also communicate that you have done that particular step to the Law Society using this templatized document called the conflict screen. And this now talks about you as a legal firm. What is it that you've done to ensure that there were no conflicts? It talks about the client, his address, the particular matter in the file that's been created already, because you're doing it on behalf of a particular file. You can say this is a new client or a new matter for an existing client. Conflict search information. Formed. If there are any steps to be taken, you can outline what those are. Is there a conflict? Conflict confirmed. Possible conflicts. And we spoke about this earlier. If you are referring to the conflicts person committee, you can say yes or no. Decline the retainer, you can say yes or no as well. And you sign this. Okay? And you've got authorization letters, and then we spoke about the quarterly statement of activities, bill of costs, settlements that you can send your client. And a closing letter is something, again, you can templatize it or utilize the template that's previously already in the system itself that illustrates the logical closure to that particular file. This is taken, again, out of the compliance, bookkeeping compliance of the Law Society. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea. And again, the way you would store all this information is you can either store this locally in your computer, you can connect uLaw with your Google Drive, your Dropbox, OneDrive, your cloud storage that we connect with, and then be able to store all of that information into that one single centralized cloud platform. Okay, so you can just drag and drop all of that. So once you do create that initial client intake and have created the file, you can be rest assured of there's one place called compliance where you're going to generate all the client intake specific correspondences. And this is where once you start to build on the file itself, you're going to start to accumulate data that you can provide with regards to statement of activity. So if I were to finish this file real quick, I would say final closure. Initial client intake quote. That's it. Just for the purpose of the demo, I'll make this as a flat rate. Let's say 500, and I'll also say the amount of time that I spent. So this is where we capture overall profitability. So 2 hours of $400 is $800, but you only spent or charged $500. That's kind of how we do that. We talk about invoice being a very important aspect of that contact management service and communication. Generate. Let's skip the preview for purposes of today's demo. Okay, so once I've invoiced, go ahead and do the trust transfer. We spoke about invoices being crisp, the data being clear. So this clearly talks about the amount due right away. Talks about the work put in, the 500 plus taxes. Talks about your terms and conditions to the client very clearly, which hopefully resonates with the retainer letters policies as well. Talks about the retainer that was received and the amount due. Okay. I'll go ahead and do the trust transfer, which is the last step to make your money. And I'll go ahead and do an electronic fund transfer. Specifically to the province of Ontario, you also generate a Form 9A if you do have an electronic fund transfer. Okay? So pretty much with that, you have that particular matter closed, right? And now is when you can generate all of the statement of activities and bill of cost that are meaningful to this particular file. So clearly outlines the work done. And let me generate the bill of cost. Another great document that gives you the financial touch points along with any HSTs. If you had any disbursements, that would be captured. Any discounts, that would be captured here as well. Okay? So once you have the initial data, the bottom line is that you can generate these documents with a click of a button. Retainers received, any other trust funds, fees, and any disbursements related to it. So this is your overall summary of the financial touch points of this particular file. And we briefly talked about the analytics. But this is where you can truly understand the book chart by client for this month. Tells you the top 3 by client. So this particular month of March, you have 31% coming from Mr. Stephen, 37% come from Ms. Mary Poppins, about 31% from Mr. Foggy. And you can also understand what the revenue looks like. Okay. And you can compare that. So you can really compare that with. Okay. The quick question is about how do I pay myself? So it's as simple as it really comes down to, for a sole practitioner, we've seen this is a good question for an accountant or someone who's financially savvy. We've seen draws. It's a common way. So you can basically come in and you can talk about a drawing transfer. But this is where you could say, I'm paying myself for the month of March 2019, I'm paying myself $2,000. And this is coming out of my general operating account. And you can write yourself a check, or you can do this electronic fund transfer, however you intend paying yourself. But if you were to do a drawing, then you are rest assured that there's a document that goes behind the scene. So you basically have a report on drawings as well. Okay, so it clearly says, it captures all the elements of that. Or if you're not doing draws and if you're just doing transfers, you can even do a bank transfer with the uLaw. You can basically just say bank transfer, and you're moving $1,000 onto the state payment of payment. And now you could say I'm moving it from my general account. And you can create your own personal account as here as well. Or you can actually put it into your owner's pocket. Okay? Or you can create your own personal account that you carry as well. So hopefully that answers how you pay yourself. But I would prefer you doing the draw, because it clearly can give you a document on how much you've drawn for what date range. Okay? Including that $2,000 that you just drew on March 1st. So I know I've gone over the initial presentation agenda. We have a quick survey to run through. So if you have the time, for those, we'd appreciate if you can participate just visiting this particular website called menti.com and putting in the code 928931. So if you want to just go into menti.com and kindly put in the code 928931. And you're going to be asked a few questions. As the first question are, what areas were you not aware of with regards to client intake prior to this presentation, right? If you can maybe help us with your, the code is, 928931. Okay, so we're just waiting. No, we've got 3 questions. We're just waiting for everybody to answer the first question. So far, we've got kind of 2 out of all the 4 categories. We've got our audience saying there's about 2 source of contact. I've got about 2 for client identification, 2 for I was aware of all the above. Maybe we do have a larger audience, so I do request if all of you can help us here. The website is menti.com, and code is 928931. Perfect. I'm glad that we're getting some feedback. As you could see, we've got about 6 individuals answering it right now. We've got about, I was aware of all the above. Okay. I think for purpose of time, let me move on to the next question. The next question we've put in front of you is, what documents are required by Law Society with regards to client intake? We've got first option, conflict screening, then we've got the ledgers, and then the small claims form. Again, just a nice fancy way for us to get a survey if we actually made sense in presenting this to you. The website is menti.com, MENTI. And the password, once you get into that website, the first thing it's going to ask you for is a code, and the code is 928931. Okay. Thank you for your answers. So let's move on to the final question. We've just kept it to 3. We're asking you what you think as the number one benefit of doing a client intake on a mobile device. Perfect. We talk about individuals saying that it's everything, including time saving, the flexibility that you can offer your customers, as well as yourself and your firm, and of course improving user experience. That's awesome. That kind of ends our voting results. So once again, I'll highlight today's webinar, which is for a credit for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits. You can search it up by the name Contact Management 101. We at uLaw thank you very much for joining us for today's presentation. I'll stop the recording here.